Hello everyone, and welcome to this edition of the String Seminar. Today we have Arnab Saha with us. He is a postdoc at HRI, and he finished his PhD at IMSC. Arnab has been working on soft theorems, particularly soft theorems in gravity and scattering amplitudes and related things. So today he's going to talk to us about the double soft theorem in generalized bi-adjoint scalars. So Arnab, over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Siddharth, for giving me this wonderful opportunity to present our work here. So this talk is based on work in progress with Abhishek, Subramania, and Dilip. And hopefully this work will be out sometime soon. So let me begin by giving a short introduction and motivation behind our work. CHY, or Kachazo-Heiwan formalism, is one of the recent remarkable developments in S-matrix program. It was developed some 6-7 years back, and using this formalism, several quantum field theory amplitudes can be computed using integral representations over moduli space of punctured Riemann spheres. The reason CHY is important because it is applicable to a large variety of non-supersymmetric theories, including scalars, gluons, and gravitons. It replaces a conventional technique of computing scattering amplitudes using Feynman diagrams. Several important properties of S-matrix like color kinematic duality, double copy relations, etc. are manifested easily, which otherwise are difficult to study in Lagrangian descriptions. Studies of factorizations like soft limits, collinear limits of S-matrix can be done very efficiently using this formalism. Importantly, CHY offers an alternative description of scattering amplitudes without using Lagrangian formulation. Although this technique was developed initially for tree-level amplitudes for massless fields, later there have been subsequent progresses to include loop corrections as well as massive fields. Scattering equations of CHY, which are very important and play somewhat central role in the formalism, map kinematic space of Mandelstam invariants to moduli space of punctured Riemann spheres. Recently, in fact, only last year, Kachazo, Early, Guevara, and Misera introduced generalization of scattering equations, which are now defined on higher dimensional projective spaces, Cp k-1, for k greater than equal to 2. And k equal to 2 reduces back to the original CHY formalism. Standard scattering equations defined on the space of n points on Cp1 can also be realized as scattering equations for n points defined on Cpn-3. For example, for n equal to 5, scattering equations on Cp1 are related to scattering equations on Cp2. And this itself serves as a good motivation for considering generalizations to higher dimensional projective spaces. A well-studied examples with this generalization, and perhaps the only one known so far, is so-called bi-adjoint scalar amplitudes. And we will see these amplitudes in more detail as we go along. Studying soft limits help us to understand general properties of scattering amplitudes. For example, the factorization properties of amplitudes and corresponding boundaries of underlying moduli space. With this motivation in mind, in this work, we explore simultaneous double soft theorems for bi-adjoint scalar amplitudes for k equal to 3. Nevertheless, our formulas can be well generalized beyond this k equal to 3. So this is the plan of my talk. I will first begin with basics of CHY. Then I'll talk about CEGM generalizations. And then I will show how to take soft limits, including single soft theorem. And finally, I will move on to the main part of our work, that is a double soft theorem. So scattering amplitudes are expressed in terms of Mandelstam invariants SAB. These Mandelstam invariants form a kinematic space. And the dimension of this kinematic space is n into n-3 by 2, which is also equal to the number of invariants we can have for an n-point scattering amplitude. The essential idea of CHY is to map the kinematic space to the moduli space of all n-punctured Riemann spheres by a holomorphic mapping given here. Here the Kj denote the momenta of external states. Sigma are punctures on the Riemann spheres. Physically, they correspond to the physical state of the scattering. And in general, these Kj are complex. So these are maps of Riemann spheres into complex momentum space. Given this holomorphic mapping and imposing momentum conservation, one then arrives at a set of equations which are called scattering equations. And these scattering equations again play a very central role in this formalism. There are n such equations, one for each A, and it can be checked that these scattering equations are invariant under SL2C transformations. That is, if sigma transforms this way, alpha sigma plus beta by gamma sigma plus delta, where alpha, beta, gamma, delta form SL2C matrices with the condition alpha delta minus beta gamma equal to 1, then these scattering equations remain unchanged. To remove these redundancies, one can then fix 3 of the punctures, and the convenient choice here is 0, 1, and infinity. Then one is left with n minus 3 undetermined punctures, and hence the dimension of this modular space is n minus 3. And because of the redundancies, not all the scattering equations are independent. Only n minus 3 of the equations are independent. And it is also known that total number of solutions to this n minus 3 number of, to this set of scattering equations is n minus 3 factorial. Scattering amplitude in this formalism is represented by this integral formula, where dn sigma is the wedge product of n sigmas, and we have to mod out by the volume of the SL2C group. So this is analogous to the Faddeev-Popov gauge fixing condition we do in quantum field theory. And then we have products of delta functions. The arguments of the delta functions are the scattering equations, and this prime denotes that we have to remove any 3 of the delta functions. And here is an integrand In which depends on the scattering data like momenta, polarizations which are given by epsilon, and of course the sigma, the punctures on the Riemann spheres. And depending on the theory, In takes specific forms. In fact, this In describes what theory we are looking at. And these representations satisfy some properties like the integrand, which we will call dn sigma by volume of SL2C times product of delta functions, we'll denote them as d mu n, the measure. Under SL2C transformations, this measure transforms in this way with SL2C weight minus 4. Now for Mn to be SL2C invariant, we would require that In transforms in the opposite way with SL2C weight plus 4. So this somewhat constrains what can be the possible forms of In. And although this is an integration, but because of the presence of the delta functions, this integration is completely localized to the solutions to the scattering equations. And there are n minus 3 factorial number of such solutions. So this Mn, scattering amplitude, can be represented in this sum form. This Jacobian is coming from the transformation of the delta functions. It is like delta of f of x is equal to delta of x by f prime x kind of thing. Now here I give an example of an In which corresponds to the amplitudes called bi-adjoint scalars. So before that, let me introduce some notations. We define particular factor in this way, where the denominator contains product of differences of the different punctures. And we have chosen a particular ordering alpha here. This is called particular factor because it resembles n-point MHB gluon amplitudes written in spin or helicity variables. And it can be checked that this particular factor actually transforms with SL2C weight 2. So gamma sigma plus delta raised to the power 2. So this particular factor, one copy of that forms a half integrand. And if we take 2 copies of particular factor, let's say with ordering alpha and beta, then it is a good candidate of an integrand. And indeed, this integrand corresponds to having a cubic scalar interaction where the scalars live in the adjoint representations of 2 unitary groups, f ABC and f tilde A prime, B prime, C prime are the structure constants of these 2 unitary groups. And the full amplitude is written in this way as sum over all possible color ordering alpha beta. In fact, there are only n minus 3 factorial independent orderings because these color structures satisfy some identities. So here we have stripped out the color part and we are left with this quantity Mn alpha beta, which are called partial amplitudes. And these are dependent on the kinematic variables. And this in, this example of the integrand, corresponds to these partial amplitudes. So let me show some examples of these partial amplitudes. The 3-point amplitude is trivial because one can fix 3 punctures. So the 3-point amplitude is just a constant, and we can set the constant to 1. So 4-point amplitude is the first non-trivial example. And for this specific choice of ordering alpha beta, the answer is this -1 by S12. S12 is a Mandelstam variable. And similarly for 5-point amplitude. So these partial amplitudes occur ubiquitously in this formalism. One important place where it appears is in the KLT orthogonality relations. These KLT orthogonality relations were first studied in the context of open and closed string amplitudes, but later it has been shown that there exists a field theory limit by taking alpha prime going to 0, which gives a double copy relations between gravity and Yang-Mills amplitudes. So on the right hand side, we have 2 copies of Yang-Mills amplitudes with ordering beta and beta tilde, and there is a kernel in between them, and this kernel is related to these partial amplitudes. So the kernel is basically a matrix, and elements of this matrix are inverse of these partial amplitudes. Okay, so now I will move on to these CEGM amplitudes. So let us again go back to the k equal to 2 case. So we just saw the scattering equations. So these scattering equations can also be obtained by extremizing a potential function like this. So here SAB are the Mandelstam variables, and we take sum over this kind of lexicographic ordering. And this A comma B, this round bracket, we define it as 2 cross 2 determinant, where the columns are the points sigma A living on CP1. Since these coordinates are living on CP1, they have 2 coordinates, sigma 1 and sigma 2. And in the projective space, we can mod out one coordinate by the other and take projection along a particular direction. So in the inhomogeneous coordinate, this determinant takes this form. And this form is nothing but xa minus xb. This determinant, the value is xa minus xb. So by taking partial derivative of s with respect to these coordinates xa and xb, we get scattering equations. Now this story can be well generalized to higher dimension projective spaces. So instead of this 2 cross 2 determinant, what we consider is k cross k determinants, written this way. And the columns now represent the points living on CPK minus 1. And in the inhomogeneous coordinates, they have total k entries, with the first one being 1, and the others are x1 to xk minus 1. And we form a k cross k minor out of all the n points. And then we define generalized potential in this way, where these SA1, A2 to AK are called generalized Mandelstam variables. These quantities S is completely symmetric under exchange of any indices. And at this point, we are not relating this S to any physical Mandelstam variables. For special cases, they can be related to the physical kinematic expressions, but at this point, we will keep them as generic as possible. Still, we can impose conditions of momentum conservation and masslessness. So condition of momentum conservation is imposed in this way, by picking out any particular label and summing over rest others and setting it to 0. That will give the momentum conservation, and we will have n such equations for momentum conservation. And if we take any 2 labels equal, 2 or more labels equal, and set it to 0, that will give the massless condition. And this is how we generalize the potential function. And correspondingly, we can arrive at scattering equations by taking derivative of this generalized potential function with respect to the coordinates. And there are total n into k minus 1 number of coordinates for n point amplitude. So here is an example for k equal to 3 scattering equations. We have 2 sets of equations. Here x and y represent x1 and x2 respectively. Okay. So now moduli space on which these scattering equations are defined, we represent them as xk comma n, which is actually given by Grassmannian GRKN modulo C star raised to the power n minus 1. The Grassmannian GRKN is a space of all k planes in n-dimensional space. Thus, it has total k into n number of coordinates. But since it lies on k plane, we have GLK symmetry, so we can remove k square number of degrees of freedom. And on the top of that, this C star, which represents torus action, we have n minus 1 number of scaling symmetries. And C star represents, we can scale the coordinates by any non-zero scaling. So we further remove n minus 1 degrees of freedom. And so the dimension of this moduli space turns out to be k minus 1 times n minus k minus 1. So if this counting is not clear, I can explain it in a different way in the next slide. The scattering equations we obtained are covariant under SLKC transformation. Now to remove the gauge redundancies, one can then fix k plus 1 points. Just like for the k equal to 2, we fixed 3 points. So in general, we can fix k plus 1 point. And we can choose the fixing like this. We fix the first point to origin, which is given here 1 0 0 0. The k plus 1th point we fix to unity 1, and the rest of the k minus 1 points we fix them to infinity. Since these points lie on CP k minus 1, so there are k minus 1 different ways of going to infinity. So we started off with n into k minus 1 total number of coordinates, and because we fixed k plus 1 point, we have k plus 1 times k minus 1 coordinates for each of k plus 1 point. So we remove k square minus 1 degrees of freedom. So all total we are left with k minus 1 times n minus k minus 1 number of undetermined coordinates, and that is also equal to the number of the dimension of the moduli space, and needless to say that is also equal to the number of scattering equations we have, independent scattering equations we have. So are there any questions so far? Okay.
Sorry, Arnab, just
Yeah.
one question. What's the motivation to go to these higher K?
Right. So one motivation is that, as I mentioned earlier, that these scattering equations, which were initially defined on CP1, can also be related to scattering equations on higher dimensional projective spaces. So for example, for n equal to 5-point scattering amplitude, the scattering equations defined on CP1 are also related to scattering equations defined on CP2. And the story goes on like this. So for example, for 6-point amplitude, scattering equations on CP1 are related to scattering equations on CP3, and so on. So it is good to study the these generalizations to higher dimensional projective spaces. Of course, we do not have much physical insights into these amplitudes that we'll be talking about. But by this duality between CPn and CPn minus 3, what we can show is that the scattering amplitudes for particular k and n are related to each other, a sort of dual to each other. So I will try to give some examples, and hopefully then it will be more clear.
But does it like look simpler if you go to CP3 instead of CP1 and so on?
So the answer is no. I mean, it does not look simpler as such. But the thing is that, I mean, it is right now it is very mathematical study, and of course we do not have any Lagrangian description for amplitudes defined on these high dimensional projective spaces. So I mean, so to say that we do not have much physical insights apart from mathematical constructions.
Okay, thank you.
Hello? Can I ask a question?
Yes.
In the leaving this biadjoint scalar, like the other theories, like say super Yang-Mills cases, there like people have also have extension to this CPK minus 1, right?
Right.
So is
that also come from this GRK kind of construction?
And there is probably some physical understanding.
Yes, there physical understandings are there, right?
Okay.
So I mean, that is one motivation. like what they mention in their papers, this Cachazo and his collaborators, that these amplitudes may be related to n equals 4 super Yang-Mills amplitudes. So there we also have this Grassmannian GRKN, and these GRKN there are related to NK-MHV, so various helicity sectors. But what is the actual connection between n equals 4 super Yang-Mills amplitude and these amplitudes, if there are any, that is not yet known. So there are some remarks in their paper, but they have not explained it very in much detail. Is that okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Arnab, hi. Just one small thing. So that in that case, actually, this GRKN sits in the momentum twister space, right? So you get this. Yes. I mean, the spaces are, I guess, different, right? In this case, you are just looking at ordinary Mandelstam.
That is right. I mean, the spaces are different. I just, yeah, exactly. The spaces are different. I just mentioned about the Grassmannian. Yeah. I mean, they are also GRKN appears, but yes, I agree with you that the spaces are completely different.
Hi, can I make a comment?
Yes.
Yeah, I just also wanted to point out that this Z theories that were constructed by Schlotterer and Mafra. So I think it has been clear. Yeah, abelian Z theory as well as non-abelian.
Okay.
So I think it has been clear that Z theory has a generalization for the integrants for k greater than 2. So I think that also kind of justifies that we should also study these higher generalizations for CPK.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
But what is Z theory?
So Z theory, okay, I don't know much, but Z theory is another generalization of these bi-adjoint scalars. It is a generalization of the nonlinear sigma models. I mean, yeah.
So in some sense, you can think of the Z theory amplitudes to contain the skeletal structure of the kinematic data underlying all gauge theory and gravity amplitudes. In fact, in general string scattering, say at tree level. So if you just remove all the polarization information and just look at the kinematic dependence of an amplitude, and you think that there is some fictitious theory whose amplitude is precisely that, then in some sense that is Z theory.
Maybe I should ask this question, both like about the Z theory and all. So is there some notion of unitarity in these things? Like, I'm trying to understand. So you're trying to generalize the CHY construction.
Yes, yes.
So, I mean, like, what is known about these generalizations? Like, is it unitary? Does it satisfy some cutting rules? Is it like permutation invariant? Like, is it like color ordered? Or what is the?
Yes. So, I mean, right now we are working with a tree level amplitudes only, but the notions of locality and unitarity are hard to understand. I mean, that is also one motivation for studying soft limits, soft theorems. I mean, the poles that we get in the soft factors, they are very much different from the usual Weinberg poles. So the notion of locality, I mean, locality would say that we will only have simple poles for tree level scattering. But here we find double poles and so on. So the locality or unitarity, those concepts are not very clearly understood for these amplitudes. In fact, for 6-point amplitudes, they have some examples in their papers where the pole structures is very much different, and there are also presence of double poles. And one does not know how to remove those, if they correspond to any physical theories, how to remove those fictitious poles.
So if there are double poles, it basically means that by themselves they cannot be amplitudes, right? Because that's not
yes,
like a good behavior for a quantum field theory.
Yes.
So yeah. So
sorry. Yeah, Arnab, can I just one thing is that this if you take GR36,
right?
This GR36 is associated to this one particular type D cluster algebra, actually, like what is called type D4, which has been shown to give the phi cube one loop integrand by Arkani, Hamad, and others. So at least for the case where your n is 6, I mean, I was wondering if this could be related to integrants of the especially because you get double, because the integrants of some one loop amplitudes rather than just
okay, yeah, that could be that these amplitudes are related to one loop, I mean loop level extensions of the ordinary CHY. But I would also point out one thing. For example, if we consider instead of GR36, we consider GR46. So GR46 would be related to GR26. So like the 4-point amplitude, I mean, so like the 4-point amplitude in k equal to 2 and k equal to 3, so sorry, k equal to 4, right? Sorry, k equal to 3
yeah,
are
k equal to 3 is separate, right? That's what I was
saying. Yeah, k equal to 3, yeah. I mean, so there are some connections between the 3 level amplitudes of k equal to 2 and higher case. So for example, for 5-point,
that's k equal to 4. As you are saying, that's k equal to 4, but this connection between the one loop integrand only extends to k equal to 3. So maybe there is some connection with
I see.
For k equal to 3 with the one loop. Because
if I can make a comment, like in one of their papers, like this Katazo et al, they say that the case k is equal to 4 and n is equal to 8 might be related to loop expansion and n is equal to 4 super n, but they don't explain how.
Okay. Okay. No. I was just saying, just at the level of cluster algebra, I think it is known that X case like 36 Grassmannian GR36 is same as the type D4 cluster algebra, which we know gives the one loop integrand for 4-point amplitude in biot joint 5 cubes. So that's why I was.
Yes, yes. I mean, yeah. Thanks for this comment. It will be interesting to study this loop if they are related to the loop level extensions. Okay.
Yeah. So I can see that there are like there might be many speculative connections, but what is really known, right? Is there some? So you said that the higher guys, the solutions are related to some solutions in the lower thing. That is known. That is completely established, and so.
Yeah, that is completely established. In fact, I can explain it just 2 or 3 slides later.
Okay. Okay.
So before that, let me explain the generalization of the particular amplitudes. So earlier we had the particular amplitudes. We had the difference of the coordinates, which could also be interpreted as 2 cross 2 determinants. So now what we do is extend those 2 cross 2 determinants to k cross k determinants and take product over all k cross k minors. And that will give us the particular factor generalized to arbitrary k. So here I have chosen a particular ordering, in fact, a canonical ordering, but this ordering can be anything. And then if we take 2 copies of these particular factors, that will form a generalization of the bi-adjoint amplitudes. And this is the expression for that. So instead of the SL2C gauge group, we have SLKC and integration over n into k minus 1 number of variables. And this prime denotes we have to remove k plus 1 number of delta functions. So here I would illustrate a 5-point example, and that might clear some of the answer some of the questions. So what we saw is for k equal to 3, 3-point amplitude was trivial because we could fix 3 punctures. Similarly, for k equal to 3, we can fix 4 punctures, and hence 4-point amplitude would be trivial. And in general, k plus 1-point amplitude for arbitrary k will be just 1. So for k equal to 2, if we take this particular ordering, both alpha beta to be canonically ordered, then the amplitude, 5-point amplitude, takes this form. So 1 by S1 to S34 plus so on. And it is easy to see that there are, since for cubic interaction, there are n minus 3 number of propagators. So number of terms in the denominator will be always 2 for n equal to 5. And similarly, one can compute this k equal to 3 amplitude for 5-point case. And this gives this answer. So a priori, they are different. But now, if we take these 3 indexed Mandelstam variables and substitute them by their complement set. So for example, we have the set 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And for 3, 4, 5, we replace them by the complement set 1, 2. So in that case, S345 will be related to S12, S512 will be equal to S34, and so on. In that case, we see that these 2 amplitudes become equal. So for the 5-point case, k equal to 2 and k equal to 3 amplitudes are actually equal. And this is the duality that I was trying to allude to. And this just not works for 5-point amplitude, but in general. So in general, this duality is because of the isomorphism between GRKN and GRN minus KN. So GRKN was the space of K planes in n dimension. So there are NCK. Hello. Yes.
Just the previous slide. Can you just go back? So this is supposed to be some 3-point amplitude and 4-point amplitude in the Mandelstam variables.
So 3-point. I mean, we are talking about 5-point amplitude here.
Okay, these are both 5-point amplitudes.
Yes, both are 5-point amplitudes. So one is evaluated for k equal to 2, and other is evaluated for k equal to 3.
Okay, and okay, so then they have like two propagators.
Yes.
Okay, so this is completely permutation invariant. It looks, but I'm just asking. Both of them
permutation in what indices?
Okay, is this invariant under the permutations of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or only under cyclic permutations? Like, is it like more gravity amplitude, or is it like the gauge theory color ordered amplitude?
Oh, I mean, okay, right now we are talking about only scalar amplitudes. So we have no information about polarization data.
Okay, but it's color ordered?
So the color ordering alpha and beta both are canonically ordered. I mean, this is a particular ordering that we have taken here, for example. So in the planar, so this will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planar order. So for both alpha beta.
So these amplitudes are invariant under cyclic permutations of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yes, that is right. I mean, if both alpha beta are cyclically permuted, it will remain invariant.
Okay, and what is the statement about this complementary thing that these two S's are equal? Is that the statement?
Yes. So I mean, only for this particular case, for this the set of 5 labels, if we take S3, 4, 5 and substitute by the complement set. So 3, 4, 5, the complement will be 1, 2. So then S3, 4, 5 will be equal to S1, 2. S5, 1, 2 will be related to S3, 4 and so on.
Okay, so these are not equal, but you're saying that there is a certain.
Exactly. So under this mapping, they are equivalent. But this is again a very particular case.
Okay.
Can I ask? So here it seems that just by momentum conservation, S345 is same as S12.
That is right. That is for k equal to 2 case. Now, as I mentioned earlier, for k equal to 3, we are not relating this 3 index test to any particular form of momenta. Because as such, we do not know that S345 will be like S34 plus S45 plus S35. That expression, that we are not really using that.
No, sorry. So just I'm asking, like, is that S345 is defined by K1, K3 plus K4 plus K5 whole square?
No. So that is
okay. Thank you.
So yeah. So we are not restricting to any particular definition of this 3 index test in terms of the momenta, but we are keeping it completely general. And what I'm saying is that just under this mapping, that SAB replaced by the complement set SCDE, then they become equivalent. So more than equality, it is just a duality.
So here for you, SABC is just the coefficient appearing in the scattering equation or in the potentials.
Yeah, that is right, exactly.
So that is your, you just take that to be the definition of the S, small s.
Yeah, right, exactly. So these are called generalized Mandelstam variables, and they do not have much interpretation physically in terms of the usual Mandelstam variables.
Okay. But Arnab, you did have some generalized momentum conservation for these guys, right?
Right. So this is imposed by these conditions. Right. I mean, these are conditions only. If we try to interpret in terms of momenta variables, for example, if we write Ka1 plus Ka2 plus ... Kak whole square, so then it may not work out in general.
Right. But even using these conditions, it's not that S345 gets related to S12 or something. It's just a formal replacement you're doing to see the connection between these two.
Yeah, I mean, at this level, the replacement is only in the labels rather than using any momentum conservation.
Okay, okay. Thanks.
Okay. So yeah, so I was here. So we have this potential function sk defined on, let's say Cp k minus 1. So now what we do, we can replace this k cross k minus, because this form the minus, k cross k minus by the complement set, which is n minus k cross n minus k minus, and they will be equal. So now again, what we can do is we can replace this Mandelstam variables with the complement set, and then we will arrive at a potential function which is defined on Cp n minus k minus 1. So in that way, this sk maps to generalized potential function on Cp n minus k minus 1. And I mean, that is the reason for these kind of dualities between xkn and xn minus k comma n. So if there are no questions, I can move to the soft limits. Okay, so let me now describe how to take soft limits and how to obtain soft.
Sorry, Arnab, just one question. When you said this is because of this isomorphism between grkn and grn minus kn,
Yes.
does this automatically tell you that the right replacement to do was to take s, to take this complement of the s's?
Oh, okay, so this may not be the unique way, but certainly this replacement gives the duality. I mean, the other way around, if we replace, we get a duality. But yes, you are right that, I mean, this isomorphism may not dictate that this replacement is the only unique choice.
I see.
Is that what you are asking?
Yeah. I was trying to see. If this isomorphism tells you,
I mean, yeah. One thing is that
other choice.
This grkn is a k planes in n dimension, and as I mentioned that there are nck number of ways. So nck is also equal to nc n minus k. That means instead of the k planes, if we choose the complement set n minus k, so then we get gr n minus kn. And here also we are doing more or less the same thing. That is, replace this k cross k minus by n minus k cross n minus k minus, the complement set.
Okay.
Yeah. So now I will come to the soft theorems. So let me start from the usual k equal to 2 case. So here we take nth external state to be soft. In this way, Sna we scale them as tau.
Sorry, Arnab, just before we go to the soft theorem, what is known about factorization of these guys, these answers? Right.
Okay, so factorizations, meaning, I mean, there are some examples of, let's say, 4-point amplitudes say 6-point amplitudes for k equal to 3. And there, like, we have some expressions. And if we try to interpret those as factorizations, meaning, I mean, the propagators, there have like different pole structures, not the usual simple poles.
No, but I'm asking, you know, like just say at the mathematical level,
yes.
You know, like, is there some values of S's, you know, like where things naturally become factors in you know, some sense. With the, say, I allow like, you know, like poles of, which are funny from the point of view of quantum field theory. So what is the statement for general GRK command that the objects that are calculated this way,
yes.
They have some factorization property as you kind of change your generalized Mandelstam variables?
So yeah, one factorization property to check is under the soft limit. I mean, apart from that, I do not know of other factorization properties if they are studied in much detail.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, we'll study this factorization property under the soft limits. I mean, that is one example. So, okay. So yeah, so we have this nth external state to be soft, and we define the Mandelstam variables in this scaling. So in that case, the scattering equations can be written in this way. So here A labels the hard particles 1 to n minus 1. So EA, the first scattering equation, then takes this form. So this first term is actually order 1 term, and there are n-1 number of such equations for n-1 number of variables xa and xb. So in principle, one can completely solve these equations to get solutions to n-1 number of variables. And in addition to that, there is an extra piece, which is of order tau, provided the denominator xa minus xn always scales as order tau to the power 0. And for k equal to 2, it can be shown that there are no singular solutions, meaning this xn minus xa, that never goes as order tau. Otherwise, there would be unphysical factorization channels. So we can easily forget this term compared to this order 1 piece and solve for the n-1 number of variables. And knowing these set of solutions for n-1 variables, we can then proceed to solving for this xn, which corresponds to the puncture for the soft particle. And in fact, as we will see that this equation is used to convert the integration over xn to a contour integration. So here, as I was explaining, that EA gives n-1 solution. So EA represents n-1 number of equations for the hard particles, and total number of such solutions is n-4 factorial. Now En is a polynomial of degree n-3 for xn. So actually, if we compute, it will be a polynomial of degree n-2, but the coefficient for xn raised to the power n-2 will vanish because of momentum conservation. Therefore, we have to consider the next order, xn raised to the power n-3, and therefore it is a polynomial of degree n-3, and hence xn has n-3 number of solutions for every set EA. So all total, we have n-3 times n-4 factorial number of solutions, which is also equal to n-3 factorial, and thus we get back all the solutions. So here is how we take the soft limit in n-point amplitude. So since we can solve for the n-1 particles, 1 minus n-1 scattering equations, we easily get this n-1 point amplitude, and what is left is this integration over xn. So we have this integration variable xn with a delta function with argument en as the scattering equation as a argument for delta function, and this factor comes from the Park-Liller factor. So we have pulled out the xn dependence from the Park-Liller factor and written in this way. So now this integration can be converted to contour integral by this way, by bringing down this en in the denominator, and the contour encloses zeros of this en. And now we apply global residue theorem. We deform the contour away from the original one and pick up poles from the integrand. And we see that there are simple poles at xn equal to xn-1 and xn equal to x1. And we compute the residue, and this is what we get. And this is the soft factor for this soft limit. And this scales as 1 by tau, the usual soft factor. So now we can repeat the same story for k equal to 3. So here, what we consider again is nth particle to be soft, and we assume this scaling of the Mandelstam variables. SNAB is equal to tau times S hat NAB. Now here we see that if we had replaced this SNAB with the usual definitions of the Mandelstam variables, like a sum over kn plus ka plus kb whole square, then it would have been of order 1. So the definition of these Mandelstam variables are different and more general in that way. So here SNAB scales as tau in the limit tau going to 0, and AB label the hard particles 1 to n-1. And then we can again write the scattering equations in this way. So EAI are the scattering equations for the hard particles. So this is again of order 1, and there are n-1 scattering equations for n-1 hard particles. And now this term highlighted in red, that can be of order tau as well as of order 1. Now when the determinant ABN goes as order tau, and for k greater than equal to 3, there can actually be cases where this determinant in the denominator goes as order tau, and they are known as singular solutions. But it is also shown that these singular solutions contribute to subleading soft factors. And since we are dealing only with the leading soft theorem, we will forget this term. I mean, for the leading soft theorem, they always scale as order tau to the power 0, and therefore we can completely neglect this term, which is order tau with respect to this one. And for the nth particle scattering equation, this is what we get. And now we have to do the same trick again, like k equal to 2 case. But for convenience, we will work with homogeneous coordinates, and we will define these round brackets with ABC like this, which is actually a 3 cross 3 determinant, and the n and the columns are the sigmas written in homogeneous coordinates. And then the soft factor takes this form. So here what we have done is we have converted the two-dimensional delta functions to contour integrals. Like for each n, there are, for each scattering equation, there are like two scattering equations for each level, I equal to 1 and 2, and therefore two contours. And this sigma actually represents this variable n corresponding to the soft puncture. And this x and y are arbitrary reference vectors on CP2. They are analogous to like reference spinors that we have for describing polarization vectors in terms of spinor helicities. So this is the measure part, and again we have a particular factor by pulling out the sigma dependence. So now the idea is to apply global residue theorem. And in that case, we encounter poles whenever the denominator goes to 0. And the denominator can go to 0 whenever one or more of these determinants vanish. So there are 3 determinants. Whenever like one or more of them will vanish, we will encounter poles. And now let me just remark a few things. The determinant can vanish in 2 ways. Either 2 of the columns are equal or 2 of the columns are proportional to each other. So depending on that, we have singularities, and here the singularities are on the codimension 2 boundaries. Because sigma has 2 variables, 2 coordinates, sigma 1, sigma 2, we have to fix both of them. So we look for codimension 2 boundaries, and in that case, we have 2 kinds of singularities. One is called collision singularities. In this case, this puncture sigma hits another hard puncture. Let's say sigma goes to sigma n minus 1. So in that case, these 2 determinants will vanish, the first 2. And there is another case where say sigma goes to sigma 1. In that case, these last 2 determinants will vanish. And we can parameterize this in this way: sigma is equal to sigma a plus epsilon a, and epsilon is an infinitesimal quantity. So when epsilon goes to 0, sigma localizes on sigma a. And since one of the degrees of freedom has already been eaten up here, so capital A, which is a vector on CP2, has 1 degree of freedom. So in principle, there could be other possibilities. For example, sigma could be equal to sigma n minus 2. But in that case, only 1 determinant vanishes. Similarly, for sigma going to sigma 2. And one can show that for these cases where only 1 determinant vanishes, the residue is 0. So we don't have to consider those things. And another kind of singularity is when 2 codimension 1 singularities intersect to give a codimension 2 boundary. So this can happen in this way when sigma lies at the intersection of 2 straight lines, where one straight line joins the 2 hard punctures, say sigma 1 and sigma 2, and the other straight line joins sigma n minus 1 and sigma n minus 2. And this xi is the intersection point. In this case, what happens? These 2 determinants vanish, the first one and the last one, because sigma is collinear with n minus 2, n minus 1, and sigma is collinear with 1 and 2. Note that we cannot have the first 2 determinants or the last 2 determinants vanishing. That would mean if, for example, the first 2 determinants vanish because of collinear thing, that would mean that n minus 2, n minus 1 sigma are collinear, as well as n minus 1 sigma 1 are collinear, and that would imply n minus 2, n minus 1 and 1 are collinear. But that would violate the assumption that no singularities come from the hard punctures. So in that case, what is happening that the three hard levels A, B, C are going to 0. That cannot happen. So for the collinear singularity, this is the only possibility. So we parameterize in this way: sigma is equal to alpha sigma 1 plus beta sigma n minus 1 plus psi. If we take alpha equal to 0, then sigma is restricted on this line joining sigma n minus 1 and psi. And further, if we set beta to 0, then sigma will localize to psi. And so we have three possible poles, and we compute the residues, and we get this answer. So this residue comes from the collinear singularity, and these two residues come from the collision singularities. And note the scaling of the soft factor, it goes as 1 by tau square, which is different from the Weinberg poles. And this is because we have integrations over two variables, and each variable contributed to simple poles, and therefore the order is 1 by tau square. So in general, for arbitrary k, singularities lie at k minus 1 codimension boundaries, and hence the soft factor scales as 1 by tau to the power k minus 1. Are there any questions?
Sorry, the last statement, is it obvious? So you're saying you just get 1 by tau to the power k minus 1 and there are no cancellations or anything.
So yes, we are looking at single soft factor here. So I mean, on the CP k minus 1, there are k minus 1 variables we have to integrate over, and each of the variables will lead to one simple pole.
So in some sense, it's a bit like k minus 1 particles going soft, but not quite.
Yes,
I mean, at least in the usual amplitudes.
Yes, I get your point. I mean, for example, if we had double soft theorem, double soft factor in usual k equal to 2, then the scaling would have been 1 by tau square. Yeah, but I mean, okay, there is also a catch. I mean, it depends on the, we will encounter that. It depends on the position of the soft particles. I mean, it's not always true that double soft factor scales as 1 by tau square. It can be 1 by tau cube and so on. I mean, I can show that in a couple of slides.
I have a question.
Yes.
Like while you were telling this, like in the beginning of this soft theorem part, that when basically two of the punctures like sigma n and any of the sigmas can go like order tau, then it contributes to told that at subleading order. So you are throwing this kind of analysis. Yes, I think here.
Okay. Yes. That will go at a subleading order 1 by tau probably, or even later.
So here what is happening, like the nth puncture is coming close to 8th puncture or bith puncture, or the hard AB are coming close? Like
no. Yeah. So the assumption is that hard punctures never come close to each other. They are always separated. They always get separated. So the soft puncture can either come close or can also be collinear with two of the punctures.
Okay,
All
so
we need is that this determinant scales as order tau. So this can happen like sigma n comes close to sigma A or B, or they are collinear.
Okay. So the ABN is order tau is kind of the degenerate solution appears in CHY. When basically
no, in the degenerate solution there are two soft punctures.
Okay, sorry, that appears in double one. Okay,
Yeah, in the double one. I mean, that also we will encounter. So two soft punctures coming close to each other, that is a possible configuration. What we are saying here is that the soft puncture cannot come close to hard punctures.
Okay, that will contribute to subleading order. Okay.
Yes. And I mean, this has been shown by these people, Cachazo, Humbert, and Zhang, that these singular solutions contribute to subleading order in soft theorem. Okay, so now let me describe the double soft theorems. Again, I'll start from the k equal to 2 story. So in that case, there are two possibilities for taking the soft limits. The soft particles can be adjacent or non-adjacent. And first I'll describe the adjacent one because that is a non-trivial one. So here we label n and n minus 1th particle to be the softer one. And they scale as SNA with scale as tau, and Sn minus 1a scale as tau. And this Sn-1n will scale as tau square, because in the usual definition.
Sorry, Arnab, can I ask a question
Yes.
from the single
Yes.
soft? So, is there some? I mean, is there some physical understanding of this single soft factor? I mean, in the sense that in the, like, if you take MHV amplitudes, there the single soft factor itself. I mean, it's like related to the Park-Taylor, right? So, like, is there some way we can understand maybe geometrically, or what this factor is, or what?
Yes, geometry. I mean, okay, I am
even
not aware,
physically, like,
right. I am not aware much of this understanding actually. I mean, MHV amplitude. So for the case of S2, I mean, for k equal to 2, so this is what
Yeah.
we would get from the Park-Taylor factor, right? I mean, that is indeed what we are getting. And the scaling is 1 by tau.
This is for bi-adjoint scalar. I was saying for the MHV, where these Grassmannians are probably more higher Grassmann are more important. I mean, the soft factor itself is like related to the Park-Taylor, right? So independently, there's some understanding one has of these factors.
I see. No, I am not aware of that. I mean, I don't know that.
But
But
this
I
is
mean,
the
they are, yeah. So they are, does the scaling go as 1 by tau square?
No, that I don't know. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
see. I mean, this is what is puzzling. I mean, had the scaling been the usual case 1 by tau, then we could have related to many amplitudes. But 1 by tau square usually does not appear. 1 by tau square or 1 by tau to the power k minus 1. So, I mean,
And this in itself is not an amplitude. This expression in the parenthesis itself can't be thought of as a lower point amplitude of any sort or anything.
Okay, yes. Okay, so that I must mention that no, I mean, what these Cacciazzo and these people, they have actually related this soft factor to lower point amplitudes. So actually S3 will be related to like k equal to 2 by adjoint amplitudes times some factor.
Okay.
So there is kind of recursive way of seeing these soft factors. Okay. Now I understand your question. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So there's a recursive way of understanding. So starting from k equal to 2, one can build up these soft factors.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
Arnab, just one question. So there is some, if I vaguely remember, there was some work on trying to understand these guys in terms of some Feynman diagrams and so on, right? You know, like
yes.
But there's some generalization of Feynman diagrams which computes these things.
Right. They were introduced by Borges and Cacciazzo. So yeah, so they have collection of planar matrices or planar arrays, which could be related to Feynman diagrams.
Yeah. So when you say soft theorems, you know, like in the usual soft theorem, we say that the soft theorem is the statement that the soft photon or graviton just attaches itself to external lengths to start.
Yes.
Right? You know, like so those diagrams dominate basically.
Yes.
So is there some statement like that there's a certain subset of diagrams which dominate, subset of this array of diagrams which dominate, and that's a way to understand this soft theorem?
Yes, I mean, certainly, like when one of the external state will go soft, so some class of diagrams dominate, but I don't think that clear understanding in terms of Feynman diagram, clear understanding of the soft factors is available. I mean, one can like diagrammatically represent or try to represent these soft factors or these amplitudes in terms of the generalized Feynman diagram, but the soft limit is, I mean, at least I don't know how to understand that from those diagrams.
So people have not looked at what class of diagrams dominate, what class of generalized diagrams dominate.
Yes, I mean, at least I am not aware of those studies. I mean, they indeed have some class of Feynman diagrams, but how to understand them from the soft limit, meaning when we take the soft limit, what diagrams will dominate, as you were asking. So that question has not been addressed probably.
Okay, thanks.
I mean, this, yeah, so this soft factor is more better understood from the CHY like integration representations, but not from Feynman diagrams.
Yeah, but once you have the answer, you can ask what diagrams will give you this answer. What subset of diagrams?
Yes, that is right. I mean,
this answer.
Yeah, that is right. But I mean that we have not done, or I mean, I'm not aware of any studies like that.
Okay. So, sorry, Arnab, just on that question. So the statement is that all of these all of these amplitudes you're writing down have a Feynman diagram interpretation. I mean, some generalized Feynman diagram interpretation. Is that
Yes, actually, the amplitudes have been expressed in terms of Feynman diagrams.
okay? Okay. So you also said that once you have this, you get this soft limit, the expression in this parenthesis is related to a bi-adjoint amplitude.
For k equal to 2, and it builds up on that. I mean, there's a recursive kind of relations.
I see. So in principle, if this is related to an amplitude, and then the amplitude is related to a Feynman diagram, so one could then see.
Right. I mean, again, when we call these amplitudes, I mean, we are basically referring to them as expressions. Okay. I mean, whenever we are referring to them as amplitudes, by amplitudes we mean the answers, the expressions. I mean, we do not know of any kind of physical theory like a Lagrangian which can have these kind of amplitudes. I mean, this mnk, let's say, so that is an expression.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that can be computed using these higher k indexed Mandelstam variables.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Feynman diagrams, I mean, those are basically represented in kind of some planar matrices.
Mm-hmm.
So the relation is, I mean, very indirect kind of relations in that way.
I see.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I mean, I don't have much better explanation to that.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So, okay, let me now explain the k equal to 2 double sort. So, yeah, so we saw this scaling, and Sn minus 1 n is scales as tau square. That is because in the usual notation, this will be like product of kn minus 1 and kn, and each of them scaling as tau. So now the scattering equations take this form. So the first one is again the scattering equations for this n minus 2 hard particles, and we have two additional terms, and then again we assume that the denominator always stays of order tau to the power 0. Therefore, we can neglect these terms in comparison to this order 1 term, and one solves for this n minus 2 variables using these hard scattering equations, and for each set of these solutions, one can then solve for xn minus 1 and xn. Now, for the scattering equations of en minus 1 and en, we see apart from this order tau term, there appears an additional term. This additional term may be of order tau square or order tau, depending on how the denominator behaves. And so it is also in reference to an earlier question that the denominator can in this case go as order tau if xn minus 1 and xn, the two soft punctures, come close to each other. So before that, we express the double soft factor in this way as two integrations over xn and xn minus 1, and we also have two delta functions containing the arguments en and en minus 1, and this is the partial factor what we obtain by pulling out the dependence on xn minus 1 and xn. So now, as I was mentioning, that there are two classes of solutions depending on the behavior of this denominator. One is called degenerate solution when xn minus 1 minus xn is of order tau. So in that case, this 1 tau cancels 1 tau here. So this term is of order tau, and therefore we have to consider all of the terms, the summation and also this term. And then there is non-degenerate solutions where these remain finitely separated, meaning this is of order tau to the power 0. In that case, we can drop these terms because then these terms are of order tau square, and what remains is only these two terms, these two sums. Now for gravity and gluon amplitudes, it is shown that leading contributions come from either non-degenerate solutions or both non-degenerate as well as degenerate ones. In fact, for gravity, the leading double soft factor is contributed from the non-degenerate solutions, and for gluon, it is both. Both degenerate and non-degenerate solutions contribute. And the scaling of double soft factor for gravity and gluon amplitudes go as 1 by tau square. But for scalars, only degenerate solutions contribute to leading order. And as we will see, that scaling is different from 1 by tau square. In fact, it goes with higher power of tau. So since we are dealing with adjacent soft limit and we are interested in the leading soft factor, we will only discuss the degenerate solutions here. So to analyze this expression, what we do is make change of variables from xn minus 1 and xn to rho and psi, where psi is of order tau. And xn minus 1 minus xn is 2 psi, which is order tau, and this validates this assumption. So now we do the contour integration, basically make change of variables from xn minus 1 xn to d rho and d psi. And earlier we had these two delta functions, which can be manipulated and written as this way, as product of two delta functions with argument en minus 1 plus en and en minus 1 minus en. And this is how the particular factor looks like. So now I would like to point out a difference of this analysis with analysis done previously in the literature. So earlier what we did was use this delta function en minus 1 minus en to localize psi to its solution. So en minus 1 minus en equal to 0 would give psi in terms of rho. And then we will plug that solution of psi to here. And after that, we will do the rho integration, because rho integration can be performed using this delta function, because en minus 1 plus en is dependent on rho only. So here, generalization of this method to higher dimensional for higher k is difficult, because now we have higher dimensional delta function and solving for psi is very difficult there. So what we do is use this delta function to do contour integration for psi. But obviously, since we have both rho and psi dependence, the contour integration is tricky. But when we deform the contour, we see that psi has poles at psi equal to 0. Now, since it has poles at psi equal to 0, so in this term, near psi equal to 0, only the last term actually dominates. And we can forget about this rho dependence. So now the contour integration for psi becomes trivial. And psi has a pole, simple pole at psi equal to 0. And the residue comes out to be this 1 by s n minus 1 n. And after that, we can do the rho integration. And this is the result. And this is the answer for double soft factor. And the scaling goes as 1 by tau cube instead of 1 by tau square as expected otherwise. But this can be easily understood from Feynman diagrams also. So these are the two Feynman diagrams for this particular ordering n minus 2, n minus 1, n. So these are two external soft legs kn minus 1 kn, which join, and this propagator then scales as 1 by tau square. And this is a hard external leg, and this propagator goes as 1 by tau. So the overall scaling comes out to be 1 by tau cube. And there are two such diagrams, and when added together, they give this expression, this double soft factor. And this completes the analysis for adjacent double soft limit. And the non-adjacent double soft limit is trivial, and they can be expressed in terms of just product of two soft factors. So for example, if the soft particles chosen are n minus 2n, so then this is the answer. And here the scaling is 1 by tau square. Okay, now I come to the part of our work. For k equal to 3, there are three possible ways of taking double soft limit. The soft particles can be either adjacent to each other or next to adjacent, separated by a difference of label 1, or they can be next to adjacent. So where the separation between the soft factors are more than or equal to 2 labels. And next to adjacent soft limits are again trivial and are given by product of two soft factors, two single soft factors. And if we choose nth particle to be soft, then the other one can be anything between 3 and n minus 3. And here the soft factor scales as 1 by tau to the power 4, because each single soft factor scales as 1 by tau square. And we come to the adjacent soft limit here. So adjacent soft limit, we denote the scaling in this way. For SNAB and Sn-1AB, the Mandelstam variables scale as tau, and for Sn-1NA, they scale as tau square. And again, with understanding that singular solutions contribute to subleading order, we will only deal with regular solutions. And therefore, these assumptions are needed that these determinants, whenever one single soft puncture is there, so these determinants never scale as tau. They are always of order 1. In that case, the scattering equation for the hard particle is this one. And for the two other soft particles, this will be the scattering equations. And again, for the adjacent soft limit, only degenerate solutions are dominating one. So therefore, we will assume that this An-1n, they scale as order tau. I mean, we'll be only picking the degenerate solutions. And in that case, this entire term becomes of order tau, and they're comparable with this one. So now there are two sources of such degenerate solutions. This determinant An-1n can go to order tau in two different ways. Either the two soft punctures are coming close to each other, or two soft punctures are collinear with any one hard puncture. This any one is important because had there been two, so for example, if An-1n and Bn-1n are collinear, that would also imply that Abn-1 or Abn are collinear, and that would violate this assumption. So we have to consider two soft punctures to be collinear with any one hard puncture. So first we will analyze this one, that two soft punctures are coming close to each other, and we choose this parametrization xn-1 and xn given by this rho and psi, with psi of order tau, and in the inhomogeneous coordinate, rho I is given by this representation and psi I by this. So in a way, on CP2, psi I is a point at infinity. So this soft factor then can be expressed in terms of this rho and psi integration as follows, this way. So again, we will use this delta function En-1 minus En to do the integration for psi in terms of a contour integration, and this one En-1 En will be used for rho integration. So this is what En-1 plus En looks like, only depends on rho and independent of psi. And this En-1 minus En is actually given by this form. So there's a rho dependence and a psi dependence. And when we deform the contour of psi, we see that there are poles when these two determinants go to 0, n-2 psi rho and rho psi 1. So when they go to 0, that means when this a rho psi with a equal to n-2 or a equal to 1, this goes to 0, this factor actually dominates. So therefore, this rho dependent part can be forgotten. We take this part only, and this can then be written as some kind of extremization of a newly defined potential S tilde. So we have to find this del psi I of S tilde to see the factorization channels. So to do this psi integration, we again do a change of variable. Psi 1 is given by epsilon and psi 2 is given by epsilon alpha, and we have to find out S tilde, derivative of S tilde with respect to epsilon and alpha to see the factorization channels. And therefore we take this one from ds tilde and find that epsilon has poles at epsilon equal to 0, and the residue is this one whole summation a equal to 1 to n-2 s a n-1 n, and alpha has poles at alpha n-2 and alpha 1. So such as residues will be s n-2 n-1 n and s 1 n-1 n, and this alpha is defined as this way. So this is like a CP1 projection of CP2. And we get this soft factor. So this part comes from the psi integration. Specifically, this one comes from epsilon integration, and this part comes from the alpha integrations. And what is left is the rho integration, which gives a kind of single soft factor. And now we see the scaling of this double soft factor is 1 by tau to the power 6. So we also had another configuration where the two soft punctures were collinear to one hard puncture, but that we can check comes to subleading order. That is because in that case, only one determinant in the denominator of this particular factor vanishes. So here, what happens, we get two determinants vanishing. Therefore, they contribute to 1 by tau to the power 4. I mean, by vanishing, I mean they are going as order tau. So these two determinants contribute to 1 by tau to the power 4, and another 1 by tau square come from this measured part. So all total making the scaling 1 by tau to the power 6. But for the other configuration, since only one determinant goes to order tau, so the overall scaling will be 1 by tau to the power 4. So it is subleading. So this is the final answer for the adjacent soft factor. And we also have a consistency check with the consecutive soft limit. So in the consecutive soft limit, what we do is take nth particle soft first with the scaling tau 1, and then take n minus 1th particle soft with the scaling tau 2, and with the assumption that tau 1 much less than tau 2, and this is the consecutive soft factor. And by taking appropriate limit from this double soft factor, we can obtain this consecutive soft limit. Are there any questions? Okay.
Here for k greater equal to 3, can one see easily that all the non-degenerate solution will contribute to subleading order? Just by tau scaling.
Degenerate solutions will contribute.
Sorry, degenerate, here the degenerate contributes at the leading order, but the non-degenerate will contribute to the subleading order.
Yes.
So
subleading or subleading or so on.
Oh, okay, maybe, yeah. So can one see that will be like less power 1 over tau than 6?
Oh yes. Yeah. So non-degenerate ones. So non-degenerate ones, in that case, no power of tau comes from this integrand, right? So only tau comes from these two measure part. And it will come as, so for rho integration, it will come as 1 by tau square and 1 by tau square.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean the scaling increases for degenerate one because integrand also starts contributing tau. Okay. And this story, I mean, this can well be generalized for higher k as well.
And also, is there any contribution from like when the sigma going to infinity kind of thing?
No, I mean, yeah. So even for k equal to 2, for the scalar case, there was no contribution from pole at infinity. And this can be checked by making a substitution sigma is equal to 1 by x kind of thing, and checking that x does not have any pole at 0.
Okay.
So yeah, so we are also analyzing this next to adjacent soft limit. This analysis is in progress. So what we have found so far is that non-degenerate solutions contribute to order 1 by tau to the power 4. So I have not written down the full answer because that is too long and not very illuminating also. Instead, I have just written down the boundaries which contribute to non-zero residues. So here what we have is two integrations, one on a sigma n minus 2, and then other integration on sigma n, because the soft variables are this n minus 2 and n. So when you do the sigma n minus 2 integration, we encounter poles at these places, 3 collision kind of singularities and 1 collinear. And after we are done with sigma n minus 2 integration, we will have to do the sigma n integration, and they will have singularities at these places. One thing for sure is that when for the degenerate solutions, when two soft punctures collide, that do not contribute at order 1 by tau to the power 4. But the other case, when two punctures are collinear with a hard puncture, that may give some contribution. In fact, here this n minus 2n will be collinear with n minus 1, and that will probably give some contribution, but we are still analyzing this one. So I have come almost to the end of my talk, and I will just end with a summary. So here in this work, we have studied double soft limits of generalized by adjoint scalar amplitudes for k equal to 3. For arbitrary k, scaling of double soft factor goes as follows. The adjacent ones will go as 1 by tau power 3 raised to the power k minus 1. And for the n k minus 1 to n minus k adjacent, meaning when the soft labels are separated by equal to or more than k, k minus 1, so then they can be expressed as just product of single soft factors, and the scaling goes as 1 by tau to the power 2 k minus 1. So again, 1 by tau power k minus 1, these poles are very different from Weinberg poles. So the notions of locality and unitarity are not very well understood. And studying soft theorems may shed some light, particularly from the perspective of these Feynman diagrams introduced by Borges and Cacciazzo, may be helpful. And also it will be useful to connect, to understand these from the BCFW recursion relations or associahedron pictures. For single soft, there is some understanding from the associahedron picture, but nothing known for multiple soft or double soft. Of course, our analysis can be generalized to multiple soft theorems, and we hope that it can also be generalized for higher arbitrary k. And is there any way of obtaining answers for higher k starting from k equal to 2? As I was also mentioning earlier, that for single soft, there is a way of building up these single soft factors for arbitrary k starting from k equal to 2 by sort of bootstrapping methods. But again, for double soft or multiple soft, what will be the relation? It has to be explored. And one thing is that total number of solutions to generalized scattering equations for arbitrary k and n are not known. What we know is for k equal to 2, we have n minus 3 factorial number of solutions for n point scattering. But what is the result for arbitrary k? That is not known. We have specific examples for particular k n, but that people have obtained by using numerical analysis. So soft limits can be used to understand the solutions better.
So for k equal to 3, is the number of solutions known?
No, in general, it is not known for any n. I mean, what is known for k equal to 3, n equal to 6, or n equal to 7?
Then but, how one can be sure that the number of solutions for degenerate and the non-degenerate exhaust all the solutions of scattering equation? How can be sure that you are not you are not left with some other soft factors coming from other solutions?
Yeah. I mean, so certainly this list is, I mean, these solutions are not exhaustive because, as I mentioned, we are only looking at regular solutions. There will be, on top of regular solutions, there will be additional singular solutions. But what is expected and what has been shown, at least for the single soft case, is that the regular solutions contribute to leading order, and all the subsequent singular solutions, they contribute to subleading order. So, I mean, the assumption is that if, I mean, there are of course other solutions, but they will contribute to subleading soft theorem.
Okay.
So yeah, so I'll end here, and sorry for going over time, and thank you for your patience.
Okay, thanks, Arnab. Maybe we can unmute our microphones and clap. And we can maybe have further questions from the audience.
So this is actually regarding what Logan and Siddharth were asking about these Feynman diagrams representation for these generalized by adjoint theories, right? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, even in the ordinary CHY, the connection between CHY formula and the Feynman diagrammatics to show that the CHY gave you the scattering amplitude for bi-adjoint phi cube was quite complicated, right? This Dolan and Goddard had a...
Yes, that is right. But still,
here,
diagrammatic techniques, right? One can arrange them on a circle, this alpha and beta ordering, and get the corresponding Feynman diagram. Of course, they are not one-to-one related.
But I was saying that in this case, is it even clear that the as you are saying that there is some kind of a planar Feynman diagrams which show the combinatorics of this Grassmannian, and that whatever theory you get there is same as the CHY type formula that you have written down. I mean, are they the same? I mean, is it like known that you get the same amplitudes from this?
Yeah, so the Feynman diagrams that these Borges and Cacciazzo have constructed are constructed keeping in mind these amplitudes only. I mean, they have these diagrammatic representations only for this set of representations.
But these diagrams are very, I mean, they're a bit weird, right? Like for each Feynman diagram, you now have an array of Feynman diagrams that you.
Right.
I mean, if you just look at them and take soft limit,
like
you get an array of soft factors. You get an array of soft factors, not like one soft factor. So it's not clear how this could be. I mean, have you thought about connecting this? Because you are getting one soft factor, right? Like if you take the soft limit.
Yeah, I mean, first we have to understand the single soft limit. Actually, what happens with this array of Feynman diagrams, I mean, there is no general construction of the Feynman diagrams. What they have done is for specific cases. Let's say for k equal to 3, n equal to 7. They have a set of Feynman diagrams. And for k equal to 4, n equal to 8, like this way. But for any arbitrary kn, there is no such construction of Feynman diagrams as such.
Right. But if I take k equal to 3 and n equal to 7, then I guess I get 7. Seven rows of 6 Feynman diagrams or something like that. Like, right? Instead of one Feynman diagram, one planar Feynman diagram, I have like a matrix of Feynman diagrams.
Yes.
And then if I say that, okay, I take soft limit for particle 1, then I will get like an array of soft factors. I mean, I will get some of them may go to 0, but some of them will be just the usual soft factors of Feynman diagram. But like, I don't know if you guys have thought about how to relate that array of.
We have not yet thought about that. I mean, we are studying this paper.
If I can make one comment, in arrays of Feynman diagrams, namely looking at it, it's very confusing even to think of the single soft factor. The reason is the way the array is constructed is that take a Feynman diagram and then omit one leg for each element of the array. So if you're taking, let's say, one particle soft, in one of the amplitudes in the array, it won't even be there. So
it's not there. It's not there.
Yeah. So
that array is unaffected. That array remains unaffected, right? But in the other arrays, you'll get some soft factors.
No, in a single array, okay, there are, so in a single array, different elements of the array are amplitudes where different legs have been omitted.
Right. So I'm just saying that if you take the array where there is particle 1 is not there, then that array will obviously not be affected by the soft limit where you take particle 1 soft. But all the other arrays, you will get like a soft factor times the reduced n-1 point amplitude or something. Right?
But arrays are not like, but arrays are not like that actually. I mean, in each array, like every element has one particle excluded and the next element has some other particle excluded and so on. So in every array, so it's difficult to see if I take one particle soft, given any array, there is one amplitude which does not even have the first particle. Like how do we interpret it?
Yes, but it will be interesting to study these from these Feynman diagrams. I mean, we have not studied it like carefully, but
a naive analysis is a bit difficult. Just by looking at it.
Eventually, you will sum over some set of diagrams. Right? So, I mean, the amplitude actually is eventually a number, and then the question is that what term dominate. That probably still makes sense. That and then whether what terms dominate to give the soft factor, the dominant soft factor.
Yes.
Right.
I have a question like, is there any understanding from the symmetry kind of view of like even k equal to 2 by adjoint scalar? Like in gravity, suppose if I get a soft factor, I know that at least I can check that whether it is complete or not by suppose gauge just replacing polarization to be k mu, and at least gauge invariance I could check. Look, so here just I'm asking because since all the solutions are not exhausted to the total number of solutions, whether one can miss something or not, could that check using some kind of principle?
I mean, one such example of consistency check that I gave is this double simultaneous soft to consecutive one. I mean, for the double soft, we have one example of this consistency check that the result is right or wrong. That we take consecutive soft factors and try to obtain the same thing from taking appropriate limit from the double soft factor. I mean, that would also ensure that the single soft factor that we obtained is somewhat right. But I mean, for the scalars, there is a problem like we do not have gauge invariance. to.
Can one have global SUN cross SUN kind of invariance by which one can be sure?
I mean, here the color indices are all dropped out, right? I mean, we are only dealing with Mandelstam variables, the kinematic variables. So
Yeah.
I have a question maybe related to what Loga was asking. If you didn't take the soft limit, but if you took two hard particles to come together, then do you see some factorization in these amplitudes?
I mean, it is expected some factorization will happen. I mean, that will correspond to probably collinear limits, and that has not been studied. I mean, at least we have not studied. But yeah, I mean, that is another way of studying factorization properties.
I see. So in general, it's not known for these higher K objects.
No.
Factorized like that.
I mean, not much is actually known for this hierarchy. I mean, it has been introduced very recently, and I mean, that's why like a soft factorization will give us some insight.
Okay. And you had one comment on your last slide about multiple soft theorems for arbitrary K.
Yeah.
I thought you, maybe I'm just misunderstanding something. I thought you said that there is this duality you can have for higher K amplitudes and lower K ones. Using that, can't you get to soft theorems for higher K?
No, actually, what I said is that for single soft theorem, these higher K soft factors can be related to K equal to 2 soft factors recursively.
Right.
Meaning, knowing soft factor for K equal to 2 and K equal to 3, one can construct soft factor for K equal to 4. But those are for single soft factors. But
Right.
for multiple soft factors, how to obtain that is not known. I mean,
but the full amplitude, you have some duality, right? That you were mentioning at the beginning.
But when you take soft limits, we have to take soft limits in both ways. I mean, from both ends of the duality, right?
Right.
So, okay, are you saying that if I know, say, multiple soft factor for K equal to 2, can I know multiple soft factor for higher K?
Right. Through the duality, like if I knew it for K equal to 2, and then I know this.
So in that way, in that way, I mean, certainly some duality would exist, but what will be the form, that is not known, because we have not worked out the multiple soft factor in full. But yeah, I agree with you that duality must exist.
But the multiple soft theorems have been worked out for K equal to 2 already, right?
Yes, but I mean, what will be the duality map? That is not known correctly, right?
I see. Okay, do we have any more questions for Arnab? If not, let's thank Arnab again. And the next talk will be on Friday at 3 p.m. So hope to see you guys then. Thanks, Arnab.
Thank you.